40,000 years ago, a woman stood at the mouth of a cave in southern Iberia and watched the rain. She did not know she was one of the last. She did not know that no one would come after her. But her bones would one day tell us exactly that. You have met her face before, in a way. Heavy brow, wide nose, eyes set deep beneath a strong ridge of bone. We call her kind Neanderthals, after a valley in Germany where the first skull was found. For 300,000 years, they owned the cold edges of Europe and Asia. They buried their dead. They cared for the injured. They lit fires in the dark when your direct ancestors were still a few thousand strangers wandering out of Africa. And then, in the span of a few thousand years, they were simply gone. The question that has haunted scientists for over a century is not really how they lived. It is how they ended. For a long time, the story was a war. The clever newcomers, modern humans, swept north and slaughtered the slow, brutish cavemen. That story is wrong, and the evidence that proves it wrong is one of the strangest discoveries in the study of human origins. To understand the last Neanderthals, you first have to throw away almost everything you were taught about them. Start with the brain. A Neanderthal skull held a brain at least as large as yours, in some cases larger. Start with the hands. At Gibraltar, at a seat called Gorham's Cave, archaeologists found a pattern deliberately scratched into the bedrock, a crosshatch of deep lines that served no practical purpose at all. It is engraving. It is, by any honest definition, art made by Neanderthal hands tens of thousands of years before the famous painted bulls of Lascaux. Start with chemistry. At a Spanish site, researchers led by Dirk Hoffman used a dating method called uranium-thorium dating, which measures the slow radioactive decay locked inside the thin crust of minerals that forms over cave paintings. The crust over certain red markings was older than 64,000 years. There were no modern humans in Europe then. Only Neanderthals could have lifted the pigment to the wall. So picture them again. Not grunting brutes people. People who decorated, who mourned, who planned. People with a problem. The problem was not stupidity. It was arithmetic, and to see it, you need to walk into one specific cave. Travel to the far southwest tip of Europe, to the Rock of Gibraltar, where the Mediterranean nearly touches Africa. The work of paleontologist Clive Finlayson here changed the timeline of the whole story. His team showed that this warm, sheltered coastline was a refuge, the last green pocket of a continent turning to ice. While glaciers ground south across what is now France and Germany, Gibraltar stayed mild. Shellfish clung to its rocks. Pine nuts fell in its valleys. Seals hauled out on its beaches. If Neanderthals survived anywhere at the very end, it would be a place like this. Now stand inside Gorham's Cave with that woman watching the rain. The fire behind her is small. The band around it is smaller than it should be. This is the heart of the matter. Neanderthals lived in tiny, scattered groups, and they had always lived that way. Genetic studies of Neanderthal DNA, including the painstaking work of Svante Pääbo, who won a Nobel Prize for sequencing their genome from fragments of ancient bone, reveal something quietly devastating. Their genetic diversity was extraordinarily low. The variation across the whole Neanderthal world was less than you would find in a single modern human population today. They were, in the language of biology, inbred, not through any failing of their own, through sheer thinness on the ground. There were never very many of them. Across the entire vast range from Spain to Siberia, the total Neanderthal population at any moment may have numbered only in the low tens of thousands. Spread that across a continent and a half, break it into bands of 10 or 15, Separate those bands by mountains and rivers and ice, and you get a network so fragile that it barely holds together at all. Each group is an island. When one island goes dark, no one even knows. This is where the modern humans matter, but not as soldiers. They arrived carrying something the Neanderthals did not have, and it was not a sharper spear. It was a wider web. Look at what your own ancestors did when they moved into Europe. The anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent decades studying the San people of the Kalahari, and she documented a custom called Hiksaro, a system of long-distance gift exchange. A San person might have dozens of trading partners spread across hundreds of miles, people they would never see for years, bound by obligations of beads and tools and stories. The point was never the gifts. The point was the relationships. When your local waterhole failed, you had somewhere to walk to, and people who owed you welcome. Jim Suzman, who lived among the same people and wrote about their world, described how this turned scattered families into a single living organism, able to share risk across an entire landscape. That is the weapon. Not violence, connection. Modern human sites are littered with seashells carried hundreds of kilometers inland, with distinctive stone moved far from where it was quarried, with ornaments made to be recognized by strangers. At Blombo's Cave in South Africa, Christopher Henshelwood found shell beads pierced and worn as long as 75,000 years ago, the oldest signs we have of people signaling identity to others, of saying across distance, "I am one of you." Neanderthals made art, but they seem never to have built that vast, redundant net of relationships that lets a population survive a bad year, a bad decade, a dying child. So return one final time to the woman at the cave mouth. Around her, the math is failing. Her band is too small to absorb a single death. A hunting accident takes a young man, and there is no neighboring group to send another. A hard winter takes 2 children, and there is no trading partner 3 valleys over to walk in with a daughter looking for a husband. The newcomers down the coast are not killing her people. They do not need to. They are simply still arriving, still connected, still pulling in help from 100 miles away, while her world contracts to the size of the firelight. Extinction here is not a battle. It is a slow, quiet subtraction. A band fades, then the next. Then there is one. Then there is her. Here is the twist, and it is the part almost no one expects. The Neanderthals did not vanish. They were absorbed. When Peebo's team finished reading the Neanderthal genome, they compared it to living people, and they found the impossible. If your ancestry traces outside of Africa, somewhere between 1 and 2% of your DNA is Neanderthal. Not a metaphor. Actual Neanderthal genes sitting in your cells right now, shaping the thickness of your hair, the response of your immune system, the way your body handles cold and pain, and even the rhythm of your sleep. Across all living humans, vastly more Neanderthal DNA survives today than existed in all the Neanderthals who ever lived. The small groups did not all die childless at the cave mouth. Some of them married in. Some of them loved and were loved, and had children who walked off into the larger, better connected world of the newcomers and never looked back. The species ended not only in loss but in merger. They did not lose to us. They became part of us. Now turn that mirror toward your own life, because the lesson is sharper than any spear point. The Neanderthals were not destroyed by a stronger enemy. They were undone by isolation. They had the brain, the hands, the art, the fire, every gift you would think a species needs, and they still faded because each small group stood alone, and a small group standing alone cannot survive the ordinary arithmetic of bad luck. The modern humans were not smarter in any way we can measure in a skull. They were connected. Their strength was never in any single person. It was in the web between them, the partners 3 valleys over, the strangers who recognized the beads and offered welcome. You live in the richest network of human connection that has ever existed, and you are, statistically, lonelier than almost anyone who came before you. You can reach 10,000 people and know none of them. You can survive entirely inside the size of your own firelight, your own screen, your own apartment, and feel that this is normal, that you need no one, that self-sufficiency is strength. The last Neanderthals would have understood that feeling. They lived it, and their bones are a 40,000-year-old warning that no brain, no skill, no private excellence saves a creature that lets its web go thin. The thing that carried your ancestor through the ice was not their cleverness. It was each other. 40,000 years ago, a woman stood at the mouth of a cave and watched the rain, and she did not know she was the last. But she was never the end. A fraction of her is reading these words inside you, carried here across 40,000 years by the one thing her people never had enough of, and the one thing that saved yours.